Well, for more, we're joined now by Ukrainian-born political analyst Peter Zalmayev, director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme. As we say, there's been a surge, Peter, of these Russian missile attacks in recent weeks. Firstly, how are people in Ukraine adapting to all this? Has it become essentially the new normal for people there?
It has indeed become the new normal. These strikes have been a reality of life in Ukraine all along, and that makes it sound like whatever you saw overnight with the destruction of major logistical storage facilities, etc. This is nothing new. Of course, this may be presented to the public in Russia, at least, by Putin as a measure of revenge. But, since the very beginning, let me remind our viewers, in 2022, Russians did not bother choosing their targets and were very actively targeting civilian facilities, including Kiev and in the environs of Kiev and other cities and towns. So this is just a tactical decision by Putin to reorient his series of attacks against targets that are similar to the ones that are now being hit by Ukrainians deep inside Russian territory. But this is not to say that all of a sudden, Russia decided, as they like to put it, to take their gloves off and start fighting in earnest. They have been doing it all along. And as soon as and as quickly as they can produce these missiles, they use them.
And Peter, how concerning is it to you, these reports that none of these missiles were intercepted? Are we seeing the consequences in real time of this chronic shortage of US-made missile interceptors?
The aftermath is pretty horrifying, of course. I also did not mention that Russians for some time now have been trying to target one water purifying or water aerating facility in Kiev, and they've been doing it for quite some time. Some experts believe that were that to be taken out of operation, that particular facility, that could affect not just residents of Kiev, but a whole series of towns in Ukraine, necessitating evacuation on an unprecedented scale. So this is, once again, this just tells you that what Putin is after. He sees that he's not achieving significant battlefield victories, and so he will do it by hook or by crook. He will bring Ukrainians to their knees, he thinks, by going after the civilian targets. The fact that none of the 8 missiles were shot down should serve as a wake-up call to Ukraine's Western allies, and of course, and especially Donald Trump. But we see how that Donald Trump is so mired now in this war in Iran. It's a matter of lack of missiles to provide Ukraine. I believe that take Donald Trump on his word. He has said elsewhere that America has enough missiles for any occasion. But now when it comes to helping Ukraine, all of a sudden his defense is we don't have enough of our own. And that's a fact. That's why Ukraine should be given this license to produce its own Patriot missiles. And Donald Trump actually withdrew that offer before he was able to follow up on it.
And President Zelensky has been speaking with the head of NATO today. Would you agree with him when he suggests that these stalled supplies of these interceptors, they're aimed at making Ukraine more willing to compromise when it comes to peace talks, potential peace talks with Russia?
Well, Zelensky first, if you remember, put forward this ultimatum of 40 days to bring Russia to the negotiating table. Well, that 40 days has come and gone. And all of a sudden, he made a gesture of peace. Just yesterday in his speech, he said that Ukraine is ready for talks. None of these rhetorical flourishes by the Ukrainian leader, no matter what one believes, what their real true target is, maybe just to keep up the Ukrainian spirits, or I don't know what the practical, quite honestly, reason for that is. None of it changes the calculations of our nemesis, Vladimir Putin. Once again, my analysis remains unchanged throughout the 4.5 years of war. In my interviews to France 24, I have said that his goals remain the same, that's subjugation of Ukraine, whole and complete. Whatever information he's fed by his battlefield commanders reassures him that the victory is at hand. And so Putin will probably remain the wartime president until his dying days.
And we're also hearing that Vladimir Putin has reshuffled his senior military commanders, has appointed a new head of Russia's drone forces. How significant, Peter, has the expansion of drone warfare become in this conflict?
Well, Putin sees that this is the only thing he believes that it's allowed Ukraine to stay in this game. Putin was willing to declare victory anytime by now or even before, because the numbers didn't lie, right? Just the sheer advantage Russia has when it comes to the fighting force is quite tremendous. It now outnumbers Ukraine at some points of the battle front 2 to 3 times, and so it is this precisely the drone technology that has allowed Ukraine to be able to resist Russia asymmetrically. Putin knows that he has some serious catching up to do with his unwieldy centralized system of control. He hopes that he'll be able to do it. Once again, it's a matter of time. It's a race against time. But right now, Russia is smarting pretty terribly at the hands of Ukrainian drones. And it's also facing similar air defense problems as Ukraine is, simply because of the vastness of Russia's territory. A lot of its industrial facilities remain undefended.
And would you agree with advisors to the Ukrainian president who are suggesting that the war is now entering a new, more dangerous phase?
Yes, indeed, and I believe that Ukrainian newfound confidence and newfound sort of optimism, seeing how that Russian facilities, industrial facilities, storage facilities are going up, and on oil refineries are going up in flames across Russia, that jubilation over what we're seeing will be short-lived. Once again, Russia remains the overwhelmingly preponderant and power in this conflict. It has the advantage, and meanwhile, our allies are continuing to prevaricate, to obfuscate, and to continue not to give Ukraine what it needs, everything that it needs. And so this conflict remains quite lopsided, and we've seen throughout 4.5 years of its duration, it's undergone several distinct stages, and it will enter yet another stage, and another stage, and another stage. We are truly now in an escalatory spiral of attrition.
And when we see these near, every couple of days, it seems like there's another Russian attack across Ukraine. Should Kyiv now be targeting Russian missile launchers, or can it even do that currently?
Well, those are the ones that are actually, of course, better defended than the other facilities that we have seen. And that's, those are largely targets of opportunity. Of course, Ukraine would have targeted those launchers if it could. It actually has targeted several of the S-3, S-400s, S-500s in the past. But some of the better ones, some of the more destructive ones are based beyond the Caspian Sea. They are protected. They're hard to find, of course. But once again, this is a cat and mouse game we're in. And it's a matter of time before Ukraine finds a short window of opportunity to go after some of the systems. But once again, for the time being, we just don't see any of the sides gaining a significant and game-changing advantage.
So where does all of this then leave any hope for some kind of meaningful peace talks? Is that possible? Would that be possible now, or even in the near future?
I mean, it could be possible, but we need to find a side. The mediating side would have to actually have enough leverage to induce both sides to come to the negotiating table. I'm speaking specifically about the Russian side, that I feel that Vladimir Putin just does not feel that the current interlocutors, such as Mr. Witkoff and Kushner, the American side in general, bogged down as it is in Iran and with its own issues, it's just not a credible sort of mediator. It does not have enough leverage for Vladimir Putin. So I think China will eventually have to show some skin in the game. It might have to do it collectively, jointly with America and Europe for that to be a successful and effective process.
Peter, thanks so much for being with us on the programme. That's political analyst Peter Zalmayev, director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative.